Jason Tatum post-game last night after another loss for the Celtics. He seems to understand his responsibility when it comes to being a leader on the basketball team. WEEI continues to blame Joe Mazzulla.
I'd say he takes more of the blame than Tatum.
For the Celtics' woes of late. You have them on Joe Mazzulla. I have them on Jason Tatum. So, by the way, Curtis, you're going back to the Storm Center soon. Are your weather watchers cooperating with photos of the snow accumulation so far?
Funny you say that. I just sent a photo to Ethan from Patrick in Princeton.
Okay.
Where I have images of a total and utter whiteout. So at some point, we're going to get a picture and show you what snow looks like.
Okay, excellent. I love when that happens with the meteorologist, when we understand what the snow actually looks like.
Yep.
So good news. Curtis will be in the Weather Center shortly. This is Chris from Boston. Hello, Chris.
Hey, guys. So I think what's going on with the Celtics team is if you look at last year, after the All-Star break, they kind of figured everything out and hit their stride, and they went on this amazing run. And what I think what's happening with them this year is the exact opposite's happening. Something happened after the All-Star game where they just kind of lost themselves. And now it's up to this core that's been together for about 5 years to kind of figure out and refine themselves at a pivotal point in the season where these other teams are hitting their strides, like the Knicks, for example. So it's going to be one of the things that if they can't find their groove back, they're going to be in trouble in the playoffs. And we can't even, never mind even the finals.
Yeah, you're about to be, you're running the risk right now of being in the third spot, no longer being in the 2 spot. And you're, I don't know if you bought into the hype last season. I don't know if you're Jason Tatum, Marcus Smart, Jaylen Brown, whomever, if you understood that you were fortunate during the playoffs when it came to injuries that your opponents were dealing with to get as far as you got, or if you were a little bit arrogant in feeling like that was all you. I mean, you played a Milwaukee team in the playoffs that had a legit injury that they had to deal with, and so if that injury had not occurred, you may not have gotten past the Bucks last season. So I just don't know if they bought their own hype and they feel like they can mail it in until the playoffs start. I don't know.
Are we also done with Rob Williams? Are we done with thinking that he is going to be the guy for this defense?
Yeah, I mean, I am.
Is it time to move on?
Well, I mean, you can't move on now if you were.
But after this season.
Well, I think, after the season, you're going to have to really evaluate, where he is as far as, because he's dealt with these injuries. So, you're going to have to make that decision. You didn't, like I told you, the biggest thing, you didn't add no depth behind him at the trade deadline.
Yeah, I mean, so I guess if they don't get back to the finals, then there's going to be fingers that are pointed at Brad Stevens, who did nothing at the deadline, unlike Don Sweeney, who did several excellent things at the deadline. Wick was on this show talking about how they were willing to spend and they were going to go out and get a guy who, was available from a non-current buyout guy, and they didn't end up going and getting a buyout guy. Right. And
there's going to be a lot of, and that's why I said, right now, I think a lot of people are, all right, Tatum's got to be a guy who can carry and elevate a team based on his playoff performance. And I understand that. He didn't do well last year, especially in the finals. Now it's going to be, what does he do in the playoffs? If he performs well in the playoffs and they lose, then we're instantly going to say, okay, well, what was the difference? And the difference was the Ime situation. And that previous call is right. It's a complete opposite of last year. They've already matched the number of losses that they had after the All-Star break this year versus last year, and it's a complete opposite to the way that they played. They were trying to figure it out last year with Ime.
Okay, but again,
then they get it.
The fallacy in your argument is that Ime was the coach of the year. I mean, Joe Mazzulla was the coach of the year up until the All-Star break.
Yeah. Because a complete opposite of last year.
I know, but you can't argue it both ways. So in other words, he apparently was a fantastic coach up until the All-Star break.
At the first half of the season.
So
right?
when he stopped coaching?
Well, that maybe when you start to, what does Bill always say? You start to figure out who you are, your identity after Thanksgiving. So maybe the identity of this team with Joe Mazzulla is starting to really show its head after the All-Star break.
If anything, it should have gotten better, though.
That's
the
what you would
organization
think?
showed confidence
So then what
in
is it?
him. I don't know. I think Curtis was kind of spot on last week when he talked about Missoula and the fact that when you talk to Missoula after a game and it's a loss, he's kind of like, yeah, I'm not
So
worried.
you're blaming the
it's
coach
not
as
a
well.
disaster. Yeah, because I think that
So you and I are on the same page.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh,
Yeah, I think the situation is very simple. All sides can be accurate, but the in this sport, especially in the NBA, the best player is far more valuable than anybody else. The GM, the coach, the supporting cast. A single player in basketball can do more than any single player in any other sport. And Jason Tatum wants to be the MVP, but we don't want to blame him for when he's not valuable. Does that make sense to anybody?
Yeah. Curtis, you and I are speaking the same language.
Like I think we can all agree Missoula's a boob, whatever. But boob or not, a lot of great players have won with boobs in basketball. And Jason Tatum is the story, win or lose.
This is Joe from Lowell. Hello, Joe.
Hey, guys.
What's up?
Hey, just from the outside looking in, to me, it seems like Tatum came to the party early at the All-Star game. He achieved what he already told us was a childhood dream, and he's happy with himself.
Yeah.
And his play shows it.
Yeah. I mean, I guess maybe his goal for the season was to be the All-Star MVP, and he got it.
Oh.
So, I mean, I don't.
Well, it's just a reflection of his play. I'm not saying he went in and my goal is, but since it happened and since he was the showcase, he's full of himself and happy as a pig in S.
Yeah. I mean, league MVPs are not turning the ball over 4 times in a game like last night against the Rockets. Like, sorry. It's just not. His head isn't in it.
I also think he's not doing something that he did really well in last year's playoffs, where there were nights where he didn't show up on the scoreboard, but he was facilitating a lot. And yet there's been games like the Nets game, just over a week ago, where he's 10 of 23 from the field, 0 of 7 from 3, but he's not. When it's not his night shooting the basketball, he's not recognizing it. He just keeps shooting. Instead, he should be facilitating and working with guys like Jalen, who couldn't miss at points last night and was freaking awesome. He should have kept facilitating instead of I'm just going to try and shoot out of this.
No, I mean the guy's averaging 5 assists in his last 5 games. Now he don't facilitate. The guy's averaging damn near 30 points. Now he's not a scorer. So did he have a bad game? Yeah, he had a bad game. But listen, this team is not number 2 in the Eastern Conference without Jason Tatum. And it's starting to seem like you're getting back to, we need to ship Jason Tatum out of here. That's what it sounds like.
No, I don't think anybody's saying that. And I think everybody is well aware that we would not be in the position we're in right now without Jason Tatum. It's just, can he do it at the end of a season and can he do it in the playoffs?
Well, we don't know.
We
The
can't do
playoffs
the
is not
fatigue
here.
thing again.
Right, but you're
okay, but the fatigue
right.
seems to be kicking in a little bit earlier this season, which worries all of us.
Because he had a bad game?
He's had a few bad games.
Well, a lot of great superstars.
Do you have confidence in this team right now getting to the finals?
No.
Okay.
No, but I've said that I don't have confidence in this team getting to the finals. But I don't think it's going to be because Jason Tatum didn't show
you think
up.
it's because Joe Mazzulla.
I think that it's going to be these other factors, and that generally lead to the head coach. And
so it was Brad Stevens' fault that Tatum didn't get there last time, and now it'll be Mazzulla's fault this time.
Don't you think it was? It was Brad Stevens' fault that the team didn't get there.
Right. So you're blaming once again in a sport where I'm putting
the majority of the blame. If they don't get there, I'm putting it on the coach.
What is the salary of the head coach of the Celtics?
Like $4 million.
What's
I don't know.
the salary of Jason Tatum?
$30 million.
Okay, thank you. Defense rest.
Well, that makes no sense. Defense rest.
We're talking, unfortunately, about yet another Celtics loss.